Here.
Here.
First order of business.
Mike's on.
We have a proclamation to read tonight. And that
Hey, Mayor, is it back on? Okay.
It's on.
Mine wasn't on a minute ago. Well, check your
isn't
mic,
working
Mayor.
either.
I don't think
Oh,
it's
there he is, now it's.
Light's not on though.
Yeah.
Did it pick it up?
There it is.
Okay. Right next to him.
Why don't you all come around and I'll come around there. The Cutter family will step up.
Oh my gosh, they look like
Ready? Tonight we have a proclamation that proclaiming the appreciation to Ron Cutter for dedicated service to the village of Evendale by naming baseball field number 3 Cutter Field. Whereas the village of Evendale would like to honor and recognize Ron Cutter, who passed away on January 16, 2022. To sport baseball and his perfection in field maintenance, the baseball diamonds on the village over 30 years. And I can attest to that because I used to see him plowing them, working out my window. Whereas under the guidance and service of Ron Cutter, youth and adult teams from the region area have had the best maintained baseball diamonds no matter if it was a practice day or a game day. Whereas he was a prominent figure in the Evendale Recreation Department and the Reading community, graduated from Wilmington College and played professional minor league baseball with the Dodgers. And whereas he spent 31 years in education at the Reading School District as a math teacher, baseball coach, guidance counselor, and as assistant principal prior to his retirement. And whereas his passion for sport was recognized with his induction into the Reading School Hall of Fame and the Cincinnati Softball Hall of Fame. And whereas he joined the Evendale Recreation Department upon retirement, and whereas his passion for the game of baseball was exhibited when he trained dozens of building attendants on the precision of field maintenance such as dragging and lining the field. And whereas Ron Cutter shares this honor with his lovely wife, Linda, of 54 years, sons Ronald, Timothy, and Christine, and Scott, and Megan, grandchildren, Zachary, Andrew, Mitchell, Nicholas, Miles, Bowden, and his special dog, Rascal. Now therefore, I, Richard H. Ryan, Mayor of the Village of Evendale, on behalf of the citizens and employees and elected officials, do hereby proclaim sincere appreciation to Ron Cutter for his service, dedication, and love of baseball diamonds in the village of Evendale. Signed by me this 12th day of April, 2022. very nice. Okay. Next, we have a hiring ordinance, ordinance 22-20, and I'd like permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ordinance appropriating funds and appointing Austin J. Doyle as firefighter/paramedic for the village of Evendale and declaring it as an emergency. May I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Now may I have a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Now may I have a motion to, adopt the ordinance as an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-20 adopted as an emergency. Will Mr. Doyle please come up? Raise your right hand, please. I, Austin J. Doyle,
I, Austin J. Doyle,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and obey the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support and obey the Constitution of the United States of America
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and I will in all respects observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the village of Evendale, Ohio,
and that I will in all respects observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the village of Evendale, Ohio,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of firefighter paramedic to the best of my ability.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of firefighter paramedic to the best of my ability. Thank you.
All right.
Very good. All right, you have to sign, and I have to sign. Why don't you step up here?
You can keep on this.
Okay, that was for you.
Austin, congratulations.
Welcome.
Staying with our tradition, we have Sophia will pin his badge on him.
That's low.
Supposed to stick them.
Okay, we'll go to the consent calendar now. The minutes of the previous meeting have been already distributed. Are there any additions, corrections, or changes? Can I have a motion?
Motion that we approve the minutes as they are.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro? Ms.
Yes.
McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now that the minutes are approved, we can go to the Finance Committee report.
Yeah, Mayor, this year again, March continues to be on the upswing year over year. Don't know that it could have gotten much worse than the last couple of years, but it's still a positive trend. March receipts, a little over 1.2 million, which was about $127,000 more than last year at that same time. Month-to-date expenditures did exceed, however, receipts by about $27,000, but that's a lot of transfer of funds and such. Year-to-date receipts, 3.6 million, which is about almost 2.8 or 280,000. I'm sorry, 280,000 more than year-to-date last year. So again, good signs. We just hope that they continue. Rec Department, of course, we reiterate congratulating and thanking Ron Cutter and his family for his years of service. He will certainly be missed. And just to reiterate again, May 20th, that we will be honoring his family again with the naming of the field officially out there. Hopefully good weather. 2 exterior cameras have been installed to monitor that baseball field in the north patio. It's going to be utilized primarily for the large events, but those cameras are out there now. And also, for those who are interested, a new adult co-ed pickleball league is being formed between the communities of Evendale, Blue Ash, Sharonville, Springdale, and Wyoming. So those who are playing pickleball, who are interested, contact the rec department. Gorman Farm Agriculture Education Day was this past week. I don't recall last week what the weather was like, but hopefully that was all a positive event. School field trips will continue through May 20th. The Soil and Star Education Center, they are still waiting for their interior doors, but there is going to be an open house for the farm on May 15th. So those who are interested can contact the farm for more details on that. Also, there's plenty of eggs at the farm shop. Fresh chicken will be available beginning May 6th. And lastly, service used a lot of salt over the winter, obviously most of it with that big ice storm. We've received 600 tons to replenish the dome, so we will be ready for it next winter. Hopefully we don't need it all then. And just again, a reminder, I've been doing this for the last several months. Our recycle day is May 7th, 8 to 12. There is an expanded list of items that will be accepted, so go on the website, contact service, but they're accepting many more items this year. So anything that you have in your basement, your garage, it's time to clean up, and I think they'll take just about anything. That's all, Mayor.
Okay, any questions, comments? All right, we'll go to the police and fire.
Mayor, I'm going to defer to Councilman Putoff since I was unable to
Okay.
attend the meeting.
Councilman Putoff?
Okay. First, we have building, planning, and zoning. There's to be a meeting between St. Rita's, Landmark, and the village to incorporate those properties potentially into the PUD at Arrowhead. There was a couple of zoning and conditional use permits requested, and those will be going before the Planning Commission, I believe. One was for the Homer's property, the other one was for Boyd Trucking. Cultural Arts Center. The wine tasting had 24 in attendance with 90% residents. Everybody was talking about the we needing more residents at those, so that was a good thing. The fine arts exhibit will be held in the gym because of our issues with the ceiling in the flex room. We want to keep those paintings safe and dry.
You don't want to have to wear boots to go to the arts show.
We want to keep them safe and dry, so, and opening night on that is April 29th. At what time? 6 to 9 p.m. All right, the mechanized shades have been installed at the bell tower, and apparently we had a sump pump issue and also had a new sump pump put in over there. Program update, summer camps have been finalized, so check the website for details on that. And we've also got good news from the state of Ohio. We got another grant of $100,000 from the state for our elevator over at the Cultural Arts Center. Brings us to around 450.
No, I think 325.
325? Almost 400. Okay. So we're getting there, but still got a little ways to go. Okay, fire. First thing I got is chili lunch is scheduled for June 15th. It's going to be back to normal. You don't need to pre-register or any of that stuff. So it's the way it used to be a couple years ago before COVID. We got a couple of ordinances. We took care of one already, the hiring of Austin, and the transfer of funds for tuition reimbursement to our operating for some new software for the fire department. So we moved some money that we weren't going to be using in the tuition reimbursement over to the, or we will be, over to the to be utilized for some new software that we need for the fire department. And we have an ordinance on tonight regarding fireworks, and we're going to maintain, assuming that it passes, we're going to maintain the way the law currently is in Evendale until the state gets everything worked out on the details of their bill up there. And then for the police department, we are conducting interviews this Thursday. And I think we have 4. Is there going to be more? 5. One more. Okay, so there's going to be 5 now that we'll be interviewing on Thursday for. We're looking at filling potentially 3 positions. And you're going to see the Shriners. Did it already happen? Yeah. Sorry. You may have seen the Shriners. It didn't have the date. It said Saturday, 10 to 12. Sorry. You may have seen the Shriners on Saturday out collecting money at the intersections. Hopefully they did well and made some money. And that's it.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions, additions?
Can I ask one question, but it actually is for Kim? Is there a time on May the 20th for the dedication?
Yes, it'll be around 5:30, and we will send out
Gotcha.
information when we
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any others? I would just add that we have selected a new police chief for beginning in June. It's Lieutenant Tim Holloway will be our new police chief. And Sean
McKinney. Sean McKinney.
He will be our new assistant chief beginning in June. Also, we're still working out putting everything together and things like that. Lieutenant Holloway is coming in on Thursday to talk to me about that. We had another good meeting today with St. Rita's about the rezoning, and they seem to be pretty much for it. Point out that iSpace is opening as an open house, and I don't remember the date. I didn't put it down.
Yeah, May 15th.
May
Yeah, I
15th.
mentioned it, yeah.
May 15th. No,
That's a different one.
Yours is different than.
iSpace, okay, so the farm's an open house.
I think it's May the 4th.
Yeah.
May the 4th. So in case you're interested in what iSpace is really all about, it'd be a good time.
May the 4th, 6 to 8 p.m.
Right, 6 to 8 p.m. So that'd be a good time to go down and see what it's all about and see the new building as well as on the 14th. These glasses are killing me. Oh, the other thing I want to discuss is we still have hanging out there the question of the billboard on I-75. We're going to bring them in on June council meeting.
Yes.
My question of council is whether you are interested in having an executive session sometime before that council meeting to discuss the situation. And if that is acceptable, we'll figure a time out and do it. So what's the general feeling of the council?
I'm assuming that that's due to pending litigation,
Is it what?
The potential.
potential
Yeah,
litigation.
Yeah. So what's the feeling? We could maybe schedule it around the next pre-council meeting,
In between the two?
between the two?
That makes sense.
Make some sense? So maybe we'll try to do it, maybe you could start finance at 4 o'clock
That's in June?
in June, and then,
No, May
This would be in May.
10th.
I will not be here in May for the committee meetings.
okay,
I'll be here for council, but I will not be here for the committee meetings.
well,
Can you go to executive session on the council meeting?
Sure.
council meeting night, well, you're gonna have those people here.
No, they're not.
You can,
They won't be here until June.
they're coming in
June.
June, so we could do
Oh,
it at
so
the
in
May council meeting.
Oh, you're saying the May council meeting?
May council meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
do an
Do it on
executive
council
session.
night.
Maybe come in a half an hour early,
Yeah.
Or do it at the
Do it
end?
at the end.
or do it at the end, whichever your druthers.
Let's do it at the end, that way we're not rushed.
Wanna do it at the
7
end?
o'clock, do it at
Okay.
the end.
So we'll do it after council in May,
In May.
okay? Agreed?
Yes.
Agreed?
So it'll be at the end of council.
Okay, that's all I have. Anything else to discuss? Okay, we will go to the ordinances then. The first ordinance is, second ordinance is 22-21, and I ask permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes,
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a delinquent debt collection agreement with the Ohio Attorney General and declaring it as an emergency. Is everybody familiar with this? Okay. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
yes,
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
so moved,
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
yes,
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-21 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 22-22. I'd like permission to read it by title only.
so moved,
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
An ordinance approving a transfer within the fire department and declaring it as an emergency.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
That's suspended to second and third reading. Now, a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Now a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-22 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 22-23. I'd like permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Now I need a motion, an ordinance approving the transfer from the contingency fund of the Mayor's Court Department and declaring it as an emergency. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-23 adopted as an emergency. Next is an ordinance 22-24. I'd like permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to hire Christopher Kretschmar as a part-time facility maintenance technician for the Recreation Department and declaring it as an emergency. This is the replacement for Mr. Cutter, is that correct? And Steve Meyer, okay. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht? Ms.
Yes.
Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-24 adopted as an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 22-23. I'd like permission to read it by title only.
So moved. 2-25.
25.
I'm sorry,
Yes, 25.
Glasses again. 25.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
An ordinance pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3743.45, parentheses D, close parentheses, maintaining the ban on the discharge, ignition, or explosion of fireworks within the village unless authorized pursuant to a permit granted under the Evendale Ordinance Section 672-13 and declaring it as an emergency.
Mayor, I think there's a typographical error in section 2, fourth line from the bottom, about the village, at least in my copy. Should say the village of Evendale. Does anybody
Yep,
else
you're
read?
right.
Yes, yeah.
My apologies. 40 years there, and
Miss Councilperson Smiley moves to amend.
Amend the ordinance.
I'll second
in
it.
Section
Is there
2.
a second?
Yep, I'll second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none.
Mayor, I also thought it might be a good idea if the chief kind of explains, since this is there's a lot of confusion out there regarding fireworks, and I know we're just maintaining the status quo, but for the chief to reiterate perhaps exactly
Okay.
what people can and cannot do.
Chief, the floor is yours.
Pretty much they can't do anything. That's the plain and simple portion of it.
Without a permit.
The governor signed a bill last year. It will go into effect July 1st of this year that allows anyone to buy consumer-grade fireworks. And with that, light them off. So the village is taking a stance until the state fire marshal can have rulings on kind of the rest of the law, what can and can't be done. There was a 11-person board set up to advise the fire marshal on what to do. And that board has to conclude its business 100 days post the law going into effect. So until then, it's really no rules and regulations of the purchase, the firing, and storage. of
Chief,
those.
even with the permit, they can't seek a permit to fire?
If they want to have a display like we have for the 4th of July, yes, they can get a permit.
Okay.
Yes, that's a
They can
professional.
apply for a permit, doesn't mean they'll get one.
Correct. That means that they have to have a professional shooter that has been vetted by the state, that we also check upon, along with all of their crew members.
Okay.
So it's a very lengthy process to do that. We do it for both of the fireworks displays that we have here. So, yes, if someone wanted to have a private display, I would imagine we could attempt to accommodate it. But I think the safety provisions that the state has in effect of how many feet safety wise would rule out a lot of places within the village to hold that.
And this board is not going to make a decision until after the 4th of July, am I correct?
They have made 2 recommendations so far out of the 11 areas of which they're supposed to.
Okay, so they may have it before the 4th of July.
Probably not, but we could always hope.
Well, in the meantime, it's same old for Evendale.
And the only thing that I would add is the state statute that was adopted specifically provides that local municipalities may do what this ordinance does.
Correct.
And that is continue regulations as they exist within the community.
And then we, as a council, will go back and figure out, and we could do nothing and keep the ordinance, or we'll figure out whether we can make some changes. Fair enough?
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Now I need an ordinance adopting the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-25 adopted as an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 22-26, and I'd like permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
An ordinance appointing Mayor Richard Finan and Chief Fiscal and Accounting Officer Cynthia Karachi to the Hamilton County Tax Incentive Review Council and declaring it as an emergency. This is an annual thing that we have to do because we grant tax incentives to different businesses wherein they promise to have certain levels of employment and different things, and this keeps a check on them as to whether they are meeting their promises.
And suspend the first and second reading.
May I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading? Mr. Burke does that.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. McDaniel? Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 22-26 adopted as an emergency. That completes our agenda of the evening, but I understand several council persons have issues to bring before the council tonight, and who wants to go first? Mr. Burke, go first.
Yes. With regards to the proposed ordinance that we're talking about bringing up in May, with regards to fencing around pools and approved ASTM covers. And just in that ordinance reading, the third paragraph, it says, said plan may include elimination of the requirements for a wall or fence on the side of the pool that is buffered by a heavy wooded area or similar natural, topographical, or structural features, making the pool not visible from the side, or making the construction of a fence or a wall on such size unreasonable or practicality difficult. So I would really like to strike that and, and actually consider, but for us to have discussion about it, just eliminating the fence as long as you have an ASTM approved cover.
In other words, go back to the original ordinance.
No?
There was an original ordinance
Oh,
last
he doesn't
September.
know about it. Yeah, I didn't know about it, sir.
That was
I'm sorry.
Before Steve.
You're late coming.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, the covers are approved. It's the state of Florida, state of California, and state of Indiana have all gone that way throughout the whole state. And it's designed and tested and verified that it's just as safe. I know there are some people that say that it's a concern that, if their child gets out and the pool's there and they have access to it, well, yeah, they do, but they're not enticed with it because it covers the pool, and it also does multiple things. It keeps the pool covered from safety. That's number one. Number two, it keeps the debris out and also keeps the chemicals in and the water from evaporating. So it does three main things, and that's why companies have gone through the efforts of designing such a cover for it, and why have the double expense of an expensive cover, and then also to put a fence up. And they can still put a fence up if they want, but requiring it and then having somebody from the village having to approve every single one that comes through, I don't think it's necessary. And there's some articles that I had looked up and would be happy to share with the group.
Everybody knows my position on it. I mean, I had proposed, and Mr. Tim Burke had provided a draft of the resolution that Steve Burke is referring to as a concession. I'm still of the position that Especially, I don't want to say it's necessarily hypocritical, but it's certainly inconsistent when we promote places like Griffin Pond and we're fixing up the pond and then it's an open water for all to come and visit with no supervision at all, no fencing, no safety requirements at all, yet we're putting these restrictions on a pool when you have the option. Again, it's strictly for the option with this type of cover. It's not every pool. It's strictly with this safety cover that has been certified. And so I know I circulated and then I probably misspoke because I did not understand Mr. Burke's position on the matter when I addressed it with a few other council members, but I'm of the position that it's overkill to require a fence when you also have the safety cover.
And actually, if you think about it, Acres is having access to the creek, or the Mill Creek, and moving water is more of a concern to me than, especially with the putt-putt golf there and everything else, but moving water is more of a concern. And nothing replaces adult supervision. That's still a requirement, in my mind.
I guess my concern is, number one, that we're discussing this, because I thought I got information that we weren't going to discuss this at tonight's council.
We're just discussing. tonight.
Okay.
No votes.
No
And-
votes, yeah.
Right, and we tabled this for a reason, because we had an extensive discussion on this at the council meeting that this came up to before. And I think some of the information that you want to share with us, we did have in front of us at the time that we discussed it. And we also had some information from the American Academy of Pediatrics, which did not support pool covers as a safety measure for there. So I guess where I'm at is I thought it was brought to me as a compromise position to bring it off the table to proceed to do something, to provide the safety protection and the relief at the same time. And that's the conversation that I had previously.
Again, I mean, when I spoke to everybody, I was really looking for that concession because I think it's reasonable until I understood Mr. Burke's position. And I support Mr. Burke's position. That was my position as we discussed last September. And I still believe that, it's the reasonable because these safety covers, the article that Steve provided, I keep referring to Mr. Burke as I'm looking at two Mr. Burkes here.
We should move our seats.
So forgive me when I'm using first names, but when Steve provided that, it was a different article. And again, it was very similar to that which we've read, that which we've discussed. It's just perhaps a little bit more recent article addressing the benefits of this type of cover. They are expensive. Not everyone's going to purchase. There's not that many private pools in the village to begin with, and those who are, not many people are going to purchase this type of cover. But as an option, when you have, again, open waterways throughout the village, that we don't have any restrictions, we've never discussed any restrictions for them, I just think is inconsistent. And I think the safety covers go much further than fence. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen pools with open fence gates. It's the same potential hazard.
I had a question regarding open water over at near the Walmart. The one side, they have it all fenced in, but on the back side, where they have another retention pond, they don't have fencing around it. Was the front fence just their election to do so?
It was a Walmart requirement.
Okay. But
When we had to put in that retention basin, they said they were,
Had to be
that they
fenced.
insisted on putting a fence in.
Okay, because the one across the street behind them isn't fenced.
Because we put that in too.
I think I would be open to looking at what Mr. Steve Burke has. But I think we also should bring back the other data that we looked at in making the initial decision. For a future
meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe we can,
I also-
get it to both committees for the next month's committee meetings, maybe?
Well,
But Jeff won't be here, but.
And I would also recommend that we put in the newsletter, if we are going to discuss it at the next council meeting, that we put it in the newsletter and allow people to have express their opinion publicly.
You did mention that, Mr. Tim Burke, that we didn't have to have an open meeting beforehand on this issue.
If I can say a couple of things procedurally. Technically, we can't bring the old ordinance back from the table. That's dead. But we can consider the same ordinance again.
Okay.
But it would be technically a new ordinance.
we'd have to put it on the agenda as another ordinance.
As another ordinance. I would also point out that because the ordinance that we did table, and if we were to duplicate that ordinance, it would not, because it has already been approved, recommended by the Planning Commission, it would not have to go back to the Planning Commission, and it could be adopted by a simple majority vote. If we were to go forward with the newly drafted ordinance, while I think we could avoid having that go back to planning, that would require a supermajority vote to be adopted because it's different than what planning had recommended. It would require 5 votes instead of a simple majority. In either case, I think there needs to be a public hearing.
You're
in front of
talking
council.
about the one that was proposed that would eliminate the fencing across the back in the woods?
Correct.
The entire,
That one would require a supermajority vote because it's different than what planning recommended.
Would that one simply be a variance on our fencing rules?
It would,
Because that one really doesn't have anything to do with the cover. That is just saying, can I put up 2 fences and not the third?
no, the way it's
Includes
written,
the cover.
it would operate essentially as a variance, but it would only apply if the property owner had the pool cover. So without the pool cover, they still got to figure out a way to fence all 4
Gotcha.
sides of it.
Okay. We'll discuss this next at the pre-council meetings next month.
So we're gonna create a new ordinance. It's gonna be the same material?
Well, we'll have to give Tim some direction of which way we want to go.
After our conversation.
Steve, do you have an article on this that you?
I'll share it with everybody.
Yeah, I think if we could come up with
And I'd like to see-
what we had from the last vote, I don't know if I have it or not, but
Yeah, I don't.
we need to come up with, I think, that information as well as your new information, so that we can reconsider it, or consider the new, whatever the new ordinance is that we decide on.
Okay. So we could discuss it at the pre-council meetings, but that's 3 and 3. That's not 6 of us at those meetings. What I'm thinking is then Jeff, Councilman, could ask us to put the ordinance on the agenda for the June council meeting, correct? Or do you want it on?
It could be for the
Mayor,
May.
we
Could
could,
be May.
I mean, one possible solution is to put both versions of the ordinance on the May or on the June council
first
agenda,
reading.
whichever you want, and council has the option to adopt one and table permanently the other, or frankly, table both, if they want to.
Just we could do first readings on both and then decide.
And we could continue
moving
it
forward.
another month if,
You could do that, yes,
let's start it off in May.
okay.
with both ordinances on the agenda.
But we're going to discuss it at subcouncil, right? You're not going to be here.
He's not going to be here. But that won't
But you
prevent,
can have, I
We
mean,
can still okay.
Everybody knows my position.
yeah. And he, as a councilman, can ask for an ordinance to be on the agenda.
Just for clarity, do you want one ordinance on the agenda, or do you want both versions on the agenda?
I think both of them are already drafted.
Yeah, it wouldn't be tough to
Essentially,
do.
so at this point, I think you may get better direction after the meeting, so if you can just hold on to the both of those, and we'll let you know after the committee meeting,
Okay?
that would
Then
make
I will work with the honorable clerk to get one version on the agenda unless instructed differently.
Okay.
All right, is that the extent of the discussion? Everybody happy with that? All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Mr. Sextro?
Here, yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
I am
Ms.
here.
McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Go on.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
yes.
Council adjourned.